The billionaire CEO stood frozen in the empty lobby of his collapsing company, bankruptcy papers trembling in his hand. In 3 seconds, a quiet cleaning lady said something so simple it changed everything. Hours later, the same man who had lost everything dropped to one knee in front of her. No one saw that coming. The once glass palace of Hawthorne Industries had fallen silent. Only months ago, the lobby echoed with confident footsteps, ringing phones, and the quiet pride of success. Now, chairs were empty, desks abandoned, screens dark. Daniel Hawthorne stood alone near the reception desk, staring at the legal documents in his hand. Bankruptcy. The word felt heavier than the building itself. He had built this company from a small 2-room office 15 years ago. Sleepless nights, risky decisions, endless sacrifices. It had all led to this moment. Failure. His investors had walked away. His board had turned against him. The market had crushed everything he had spent half his life building. Daniel exhaled slowly, his shoulders sinking under the invisible weight of defeat. That's when he heard the soft sound of a mop sliding across marble. He turned. A woman in a simple gray cleaning uniform moved quietly across the floor, unaware that the man standing there had just lost nearly everything. Her name tag read Elena. She glanced up briefly and noticed his expression. Not the suit, not the expensive watch, just the sadness in his eyes. She paused. "So, are you okay?" No one had asked him that in months. And strangely, that simple question almost broke him. Daniel forced a tired smile. "Define okay," he said quietly. Elena leaned her mop against the bucket, studying him with calm curiosity. She had seen people like him before. Powerful men who carried the weight of entire buildings on their shoulders. But today, he looked like a man who had simply run out of strength. "You look like someone who just lost something important," she said gently. Daniel gave a dry laugh. "Something. I lost everything." He lifted the bankruptcy papers slightly. Company's gone. Investors gone. Future probably gone too. Elena didn't react with shock like most people would. Instead, she nodded slowly. "I see." Daniel blinked. "That's it. No sympathy speech." She smiled faintly. "No, because people who build something once can build something again." Daniel looked at her, surprised. "You don't even know what I built." She shrugged softly. "But I know something about losing everything." That caught his attention. For the first time that day, Daniel lowered the papers. "Yeah." Elena dipped the mop back into the bucket, wringing it slowly. "My husband died 6 years ago," she said calmly. "Car accident." Daniel's expression softened. "I had a daughter to raise alone," she continued, "and zero money." Silence settled between them. "Trust me," she said quietly. "Starting from nothing isn't the end." Daniel sat down heavily on one of the empty lobby chairs. Elena continued cleaning, but her words stayed in the air. "I worked 3 jobs after my husband died," she said casually. "Cleaning offices at night, cooking at a small diner in the morning, delivering groceries on weekends." Daniel watched her move the mop slowly across the marble floor. She didn't sound bitter. She didn't sound defeated. She sounded peaceful. "How did you survive that?" he asked. Elena chuckled softly. "You'd be surprised what love for a child can do." She paused, looking at him again. "But more importantly, I stopped thinking about what I lost." Daniel frowned. "Then what did you think about?" "What I still had." Daniel leaned forward slightly. "And what was that?" She pointed gently at his chest. "The same thing you still have." Daniel frowned deeper. "I'm not following." Elena tilted her head thoughtfully. "You still have your mind, your experience, your mistakes." She tapped the bankruptcy papers lightly. "And your lessons." Daniel stared at the papers in his hands again. For months, he had seen them as proof of failure. But for the first time, he wondered if there was something else. Daniel rubbed his temples. "You make it sound simple," he said. Elena shook her head. "Oh no, it's not simple." She leaned against the mop handle. "It's terrifying." Daniel almost smiled. "Then why do you sound so calm about it?" Elena's eyes softened. Because the scariest moment in life is the moment before you realize you're stronger than you thought. Daniel stared at her. No investor had ever spoken to him like this. No business mentor either. Yet somehow, the cleaning lady standing in front of him understood something everyone else had missed. You know, Daniel said slowly, my advisors told me something very different today. What did they say? That my career is finished. Elena laughed softly. Advisors love dramatic endings. Daniel chuckled quietly. True. She stepped closer, lowering her voice slightly. Can I ask you something? Sure. How long did it take you to build this company? 15 years. She nodded thoughtfully. So you're telling me 15 years of experience disappeared overnight? Daniel blinked. Well, no. Exactly. She picked up the mop again. You didn't lose everything today. She looked back at him. You just lost one chapter. Daniel stood slowly. Her words echoed in his mind. You just lost one chapter. He had spent the entire day thinking his story was over. Yet this woman, who cleaned floors for a living, spoke about life like it was a book still being written. What's your name? He asked. Elena. Well, Elena, I have to ask. She looked at him curiously. Ask what? If you're so wise, why are you cleaning floors instead of running companies? Elena smiled. Because right now, this job feeds my daughter. Daniel nodded slowly. Fair point. She finished wringing the mop. But someday, she added casually, I'll open my own small bakery. Daniel raised an eyebrow. A bakery? My daughter and I love baking together. Her eyes sparkled slightly. And I make the best cinnamon bread in the city. Daniel chuckled. You sound confident. Not confident, she corrected gently. Hopeful. The word lingered in the quiet lobby. Daniel looked down at the bankruptcy papers one more time. Then, suddenly, he dropped them in the trash. Elena blinked. What was that for? Daniel smiled for the first time that day. Because I think you just made me $3 billion. She stared at him. What? He pointed to his head. In about 3 seconds. Elena stared at Daniel as if he had suddenly started speaking another language. $3 billion, she repeated, confused. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck, a spark of energy returning to his tired eyes. No, sorry. I meant 3 seconds, he corrected with a small laugh. You gave me the idea in 3 seconds. Elena crossed her arms, amused. I don't remember giving you any business advice. Daniel walked toward the tall glass windows of the lobby, staring out at the gray skyline. You did, he said quietly. You told me I didn't lose everything, just a chapter. Elena nodded slowly. Yes. Daniel turned back toward her. Well, my biggest mistake was thinking this company was the story. He pointed toward the empty office floors above them. But it was only one product, one direction, one model. Elena tilted her head. And now, Daniel's mind raced with possibilities. Now I stopped trying to rebuild the same thing, he said. Instead, I built something completely different. Elena raised an eyebrow. And that's worth billions. Daniel smiled slightly. Sometimes the best ideas are hidden inside the worst failures. He looked at her again, thoughtful. You know what the real problem with successful people is? What? We forget how to see things simply. He tapped the floor with his shoe. And sometimes the person who sees the answer is the one cleaning the room. Daniel spent the next 20 minutes pacing the lobby. Elena continued mopping quietly, though now she watched him with curiosity. He muttered ideas under his breath, piecing together fragments of thoughts. Supply chains, digital services, a new type of platform. Suddenly, he stopped. Elena. She looked up. Yes. What did you say your dream was? To open a bakery. And why a bakery? She shrugged lightly. Because people need comfort. Daniel's eyes widened slightly. Comfort. He whispered the word again. That's it. Elena blinked. What is? Daniel rushed toward the reception desk and grabbed a notepad. 4 years, My company built expensive software for corporations, he explained quickly. Complex systems, huge contracts. And I ignored the biggest market in the world. Elena leaned slightly closer. What market? Regular people. He scribbled rapidly. Small businesses, local stores, independent workers. His voice grew stronger with each sentence. They all need simple tools to survive online. Elena watched the excitement return to his face. So, you help people like me? Daniel paused. Then he smiled. Yes. Exactly like you. By midnight, the lobby lights were the only ones still glowing in the building. Elena had finished cleaning hours ago, but Daniel had asked if she could stay a little longer. Not as an employee, as someone whose opinion suddenly mattered. He sat across from her at a small table, sketching ideas. What if small businesses could launch online stores in minutes? He said. Not weeks. Elena listened carefully. And they don't need to understand technology. Exactly. She tapped the table thoughtfully. My cousin owns a small flower shop, she said. She tried selling online once. What happened? She gave up. Daniel nodded. Too complicated. Way too complicated. Daniel leaned back slowly. That's the gap. He looked at her with a growing smile. The market doesn't need more complex tools. It needs simpler ones. Elena smiled softly. So you build something normal people can use. Daniel pointed at her. Exactly. She shook her head in disbelief. All that from a cleaning lady talking about bakeries. Daniel laughed quietly. No. He looked at her with genuine respect. From someone who understands real life. 3 months later, the empty lobby looked very different. The bankruptcy signs were gone. In their place stood a small temporary startup office. Whiteboards filled the walls. Developers worked from folding tables. Investors visited almost daily. Daniel's new company had a simple mission. Help small businesses survive online. The platform launched quietly. Within weeks, thousands of small shops joined. Bakeries, florists, local clothing stores, family restaurants. Elena visited one afternoon during her shift and froze when she saw the busy office. You did all this? She asked. Daniel smiled. We did. She laughed. I just mopped the floor. No, he corrected gently. You reminded me why businesses exist. He showed her a screen filled with growing numbers. Look. Sales data flashed across the dashboard. Users increasing every hour. Revenue climbing rapidly. Elena stared at the screen. This is huge. Daniel nodded slowly. And investors think it could be worth. He hesitated. $8 billion. Elena nearly dropped the coffee she was holding. You're joking. Daniel smiled. No. Then he added quietly. And none of it would exist without you. The night the company officially crossed the $1 billion valuation, Daniel hosted small celebration in the lobby. Not a fancy party. Just pizza, laughter, and tired developers cheering. But Daniel had one more announcement to make. He stepped onto a chair and raised a glass. I want to thank someone tonight, he said. The room grew quiet. Elena. The crowd turned as the cleaning lady near the back froze in shock. Daniel stepped down and walked toward her. You helped build this company, he said. I didn't. You did. He looked at everyone in the room. 3 months ago I was standing right here with bankruptcy papers. He paused, and she reminded me that failure is just a chapter. Silence filled the room. Then, slowly, Daniel did something no one expected. He dropped to one knee. Gasps echoed across the office. Elena, he said softly, you didn't just save my company. You saved me. He looked up at her with honest emotion. So I have one question. Her hands trembled. Yes. Daniel smiled. Will you write the rest of this story with me? The room stayed silent for a long moment after Daniel's question. Elena looked down at him, completely stunned. Daniel, stand up, she whispered nervously. The developers nearby exchanged confused smiles. Some thought it was a joke. Others sensed something deeper. Daniel remained on one knee, calm but sincere. "I'm serious," he said softly. Elena's hands trembled slightly. "You barely know me." Daniel shook his head. "I know more about you than you think." She frowned. "How?" Daniel stood slowly and guided her to a quieter corner of the lobby. "When you spoke to me that night," he said, "you didn't talk like someone who had given up on life." Elena crossed her arms. "I couldn't give up. I had my daughter." Daniel nodded. "Exactly." He paused before continuing. "People who survive that kind of pain, they understand things most of us never learn." Elena sighed quietly. "Daniel, I helped you see an idea. That's all." "No," he replied gently. "You reminded me what matters." She looked away, overwhelmed. "Running a billion-dollar company is impressive," Daniel continued. "But building a life after losing everything, that's real strength." For the first time, Elena's eyes filled with tears. Daniel's voice softened. "I don't just want a business partner." He looked at her carefully. "I want someone who sees the world the way you do." Elena walked outside into the cool night air. The city lights shimmered across the street as she tried to process what had just happened. A billionaire CEO had just proposed, in front of an entire office. She leaned against the building wall and laughed quietly to herself. "This is insane," she whispered. A moment later, Daniel stepped outside too. He kept a respectful distance. "I didn't mean to overwhelm you," he said. Elena shook her head. "You didn't overwhelm me." She looked at him honestly. "You shocked me." Daniel nodded slowly. "That's fair." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Elena spoke again. "You don't know my life, Daniel." "Tell me." "My husband died 6 years ago," she said softly. "After that, everything collapsed." Daniel listened without interrupting. "I had debts. A baby. No family nearby." Her voice trembled slightly. "I cleaned offices at night while my daughter slept in a stroller beside me." Daniel felt a knot tighten in his chest. "I promised myself one thing," she continued. "What?" "That no matter how hard life became, I would never let bitterness win." She looked at him. "That's the only reason I'm still standing." Daniel smiled gently. "And that's exactly why I asked." The next afternoon, Elena returned to the office with her daughter. 7-year-old Lily held her mother's hand tightly as they stepped into the building. She looked around with wide eyes. "Mom, this place is huge." Elena smiled. "Yes, it is." Daniel walked over and crouched down to Lily's level. "You must be Lily." She nodded shyly. "How did you know my name?" "Your mom talks about you a lot." Lily grinned. "Did she tell you I help her bake cinnamon bread?" Daniel laughed. "Yes. Apparently it's the best in the city." Lily looked proud. "Because we make it together." Elena watched the moment quietly. For years, she had protected Lily from the harshness of life. But seeing her daughter laugh inside this bright office felt like watching a new future open. Daniel stood again. "Elena," he said, "I want you to see something." He led them toward a large screen showing live platform data. Thousands of small businesses were now using the system. Bakeries, flower shops, family cafes. Daniel pointed. "See that bakery in Chicago?" Elena nodded. "They joined last week." He smiled. "Yesterday they sold out of everything." Lily clapped excitedly. "Mom, that's like our dream bakery." Daniel looked at Elena warmly. "Exactly." Weeks passed, and Elena slowly became part of the company's world. Not as a cleaner anymore, but as something far more valuable. Daniel invited her to meetings with designers and developers. At first she felt completely out of place. "I don't understand business language," she admitted once. Daniel smiled. "You understand people. That's more important." During product discussions, Elena asked simple questions. Questions the engineers had never considered. Would my cousin understand this button? Why is this page so confusing? Why can't it just say start your shop? At first the team laughed. Then they realized something surprising. Every time Elena simplified something, user numbers increased. Customers loved the changes. Daniel watched this transformation with quiet admiration. One evening he said to her, You know what the funny part is? What? You think you're learning business? Elena smiled. Aren't I? Daniel shook his head. No, you're teaching us how the real world works. For the first time in years, Elena felt something new. Possibility. One evening after work, Elena and Daniel sat on the office rooftop. The city lights stretched endlessly around them. Do you regret asking me that night? Elena asked. Daniel smiled. Not for a second. She looked thoughtful. You realize people will talk, right? They already do. Elena laughed softly. Cleaning lady becomes partner in billion-dollar company. Daniel shrugged. I've heard worse headlines. She looked at him seriously. But this isn't a fairy tale. I know. I have a daughter. Responsibilities. A life that isn't simple. Daniel nodded. That's exactly the life I respect. He looked out at the skyline. You know something strange. What? When I lost my company, I thought my story was ending. Elena smiled gently, but it wasn't. No, Daniel said. It was just waiting for the right person to walk into the room with a mop. They both laughed quietly, but in that moment, Elena realized something. Maybe life really did give second chances. Sometimes, in the most unexpected ways. The morning Elena finally made her decision felt strangely calm. She walked into the office earlier than usual, Lily's small hand in hers. The startup floor was already buzzing with quiet activity. Developers typing, designers debating colors, coffee machines humming. Daniel looked up from his desk and immediately sensed something different in her expression. You look like someone who figured something out, he said. Elena smiled softly. Maybe I did. They stepped into a small meeting room. For a moment she simply looked at him. You asked me if I would write the rest of the story with you, she said. Daniel nodded. I remember. Elena took a slow breath. For years my only goal was survival, raising my daughter, paying rent, keeping food on the table. Daniel listened carefully. But somewhere along the way, she continued, I stopped believing life could offer anything more than that. Her voice softened. Then one night I met a man standing in a lobby with bankruptcy papers. Daniel smiled faintly. Elena. She raised a hand. So here's my answer. He leaned forward slightly. Yes. Elena's eyes sparkled. I'll write the rest of the story. Daniel exhaled in quiet relief. But, she added, smiling, only if Lily and I are part of every chapter. The company exploded faster than anyone expected. Within 6 months, Daniel's platform became one of the fastest growing tools for small businesses in the world. Millions of shop owners signed up. Bakeries, florists, family cafes, independent creators. Everywhere, people who had once struggled to survive online suddenly had a simple way to build their businesses. Investors began calling nonstop. Tech magazines wrote headlines like, "The billion-dollar comeback." But Daniel always corrected them during interviews. This isn't my comeback, he would say. It belongs to thousands of small business owners. And one cleaning lady. Inside the office, Elena continued doing what she did best, keeping things human. Whenever the product team overcomplicated something, she asked simple questions. Would my neighbor understand this? Would my daughter? Those questions became famous inside the company. Developers even joked about something called the Elena test. If Lily could understand a feature, it stayed. If not, it went back to the drawing board. And somehow, that simple rule kept the billion-dollar company grounded in something rare. Real life. One afternoon, Daniel visited Elena's small apartment for the first time. The kitchen smelled like warm cinnamon bread. Lily proudly carried a tray from the oven. Careful, Elena warned. I'm careful, Lily insisted. Daniel laughed as she placed the tray on the table. He took a bite and widened his eyes dramatically. Okay, he said. Elena wasn't exaggerating. Lily beamed. Best in the city. Best in the universe. They all laughed. But then Daniel grew quiet. Elena, he said gently, have you ever thought about opening that bakery? She shrugged. It was always just a dream. Daniel leaned forward. Dreams built this company. She looked at him carefully. What are you saying? I'm saying we help people build businesses. He smiled. So why not start with yours? Elena stared at him. You're serious? Daniel nodded. Within months, Lily and Elena's bakery opened on a cozy corner street. And using Daniel's platform, their cinnamon bread began shipping across the country. Sometimes, the biggest dreams start in the smallest kitchens. The day Daniel officially proposed again was very different from the first. No crowded office. No shocked developers. Just a quiet evening inside Elena's bakery. The shop had closed for the night, leaving only the warm smell of sugar and cinnamon in the air. Lily sat at a nearby table pretending not to listen. Daniel walked toward Elena with a small velvet box in his hand. This feels more appropriate than the lobby, he said. Elena laughed softly, a little less dramatic. Daniel opened the box. The ring inside sparkled under the warm bakery lights. But the question is the same, he said gently. Elena's eyes filled with emotion. You already know my answer, she whispered. Daniel smiled. Still, I want to hear it. She took a breath. Yes. From the table behind them, Lily suddenly cheered. I knew it. All three of them burst into laughter, and in that small bakery, surrounded by flour and hope, a new family quietly began. Years later, Daniel often told the story to young entrepreneurs, but he always started the same way. Success didn't begin in a boardroom, he would say. It began with a mop. The audience usually laughed, until he explained. He told them about the empty lobby, the bankruptcy papers, the quiet cleaning lady who refused to let life turn her bitter, and the simple sentence that changed everything. You didn't lose everything. You just lost one chapter. The company eventually grew far beyond $1 billion, but Daniel insisted that wasn't the real victory. The real victory was learning something far more important. That wisdom can come from anywhere. That kindness can change someone's future. And that sometimes, the person who saves your life isn't wearing a suit. Sometimes, they're holding a mop. Some people walk into our lives quietly and change everything. Never underestimate the power of kindness, wisdom, or second chances, because the next chapter of your life might begin with the most unexpected person. If this story touched your heart, subscribe, like, and join our family.